networker is like a great interviewer.
I'm huge on authenticity, guys. It's a big part of my message.
Claim your local listings and don't get caught paying someone for your local listing.
If you want to be successful, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
And when in doubt, give to other people and don't expect anything in return. But in giving to other people and helping them, it almost always comes back.
It's using the power of partnership, creating trusted partner networks to work with you to make your company be an offer more than just you.
They've done 90% of the work. It's your job to do the last 10% to meet them in the middle.
Don't let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ask Fowler Masterminds podcast, brought to you by Advanced Septic Services and Fuse Networks. My name is Galen.
Good morning, I'm Joe.
And we're coming at you virtually from the BD local studios in Tacoma, Washington. So, Joe, can you tell our new listeners and viewers how our podcast came to be, please?
Sure. So we first started out as a Facebook group page, and the purpose was to bring business owners together to kind of just talk and communicate with one another, ask questions, share tips, things like that. And that kind of just morphed into having a podcast called Ask Fowler Masterminds, where we bring on different masterminds to talk about different topics as they all relate to business.
Awesome. So before we introduce our guests that you see on screen, our last episode, we had our guest, Kisan Patel. What is M&A? What was one of your main takeaways from when Kisan was on with us?
So one of the biggest thing I learned really about is making sure you're selling your business for the right reasons, and then making sure that the person or company who's purchasing your business is going to kind of keep your business kind of as is, that they're not doing a complete 180 and kind of turning things completely around.
Awesome. So which is a great transition into our guest today. Today's guest is Dan Weedin. Joe, you want to start with the intro?
Sure. Dan Weedin is an experienced entrepreneur, thought leader, author, and award-winning speaker who has a passion for consulting, coaching, and mentoring other entrepreneurs and business professionals. He has the rare ability to translate his success in the insurance industry, public speaking, nonprofit world, and athletic coaching into applicable and transferable principles that dramatically improve the effectiveness of those business owners and executives he works with.
Dan has helped drive performance and resilience improvement with countless small and mid-sized companies across the country. Dan focuses his consulting skills to improve protection of property, people, and profits for his clients. His goal is to safeguard the valuation and legacy for his clients. He has 4 published books, with the most recent being Back 9 Walking, A Guide to Living Unleashed in 2021. Dan also hosts a nationally syndicated podcast, the Shrimp Tack podcast for Seattle. He was inducted into the $1 Million Consulting Hall of Fame in 2012. He resides in Poolsville with his wife, Barb, and their canine companion, Bella. So everyone, welcome Dan to our podcast.
Thanks for coming on, Dan.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. I guess does this make me a mastermind?
It does. You are a mastermind.
Part of the family.
Wait till I tell my wife. That'll be great. So thanks.
Awesome. We'll get into the book later. Back 9 Walking. I figure as a golfer, I'd be more a back 9 riding than walking, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So we ask our guests the same 3 questions all the time, and I'll start with the first question. So what are some early lessons learned as an entrepreneur?
Well, it's funny, as I pondered that a little bit, Galen, this sounds silly, but one of my first lessons was it's hard. Just like golf is hard, being an entrepreneur is hard. And I don't know that I gave that respect to it. And I don't know that everybody going in who has a great idea, a great vision, a great product, a great service, and says, I can run my own business. I can make tons of money and it's going to be great. Don't have to work for the man, right? It's hard and it's not for everybody. And resilience, which is partly what the book is about, resilience, persistence, perseverance, everything about that comes into play. And one of my early lessons was even if you do have a plan, the old Mike Tyson, even if you do have a plan, you're still going to get punched in the face, and getting back up is a critical piece of that. The other lesson that I think I learned, I don't know if I learned it early or midway through, was kind of the whole theory of, you know what, everything's going to be okay. There's going to be hard times, there's going to be great times, there's going to be everything in between. But at the end of the day, the sun's going to come up the next day, and you're going to be okay. You just have to sometimes fight through adversity and embrace it as well as you would embrace the good things. And so those probably, and there's are two of the lessons I learned from the early and mid years of being an entrepreneur, is that it's hard. It's going to knock you down. You have to get back up again, because the next day is going to come, and it's going to be okay.
So because of that, you said you learned that it was hard. So during those hard times, what was the best piece of advice that you were given?
I think it kind of goes into the next one. Hang in there. Don't give up, because so many entrepreneurs, so many business owners will quit or retire or give up right about the time the breakthrough is coming. We never know exactly when that breakthrough is. So early on in your career, as an entrepreneur, hang in there, as long as you can, because you never know when that big opportunity is going to be there. And the same can be said throughout someone's career, because, hey, I went through the Great Recession when I was in business. And then we had this thing called COVID-19 and had a pandemic. So things outside of our control are going to happen. And there are going to be times that we may have thought we made it, and then we have to kind of start over again. And that same piece of advice, don't give up on it, because you might be that close.
Right. That's so awesome. I mean, we've talked about it before, the pandemic. What did businesses do or people do? Did they pause, panic, or pivot? Right. And it just, sometimes people didn't want to get up and hang in there because it was really dark. But, you persevere. And that's, there is going to be a next day. Our last question, since this is a marketing podcast, so why is marketing important?
One of my early mentors, and actually I still follow him quite a bit, is Alan Weiss, who wrote $1 Million Consulting and about 70 other books on consulting. And he says something to the effect of, you're not in the consulting business, you're in the marketing business. Because if you don't toot your own horn, there is no music. The same is true. We can set up a business plan. Everybody can set up a business plan, but without a marketing plan, the business plan is going to fail. Marketing is everything. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. You have to have clients. You have to have customers. You have to have people buying your stuff, whatever that is. And so people aren't going to just pick up the phone. Maybe that's another early entrepreneur lesson. Just because you hang out your shingle, even in a virtual world, you put up a website, people aren't going to find it unless you market it. And so marketing is everything. I believe it's more important than a business plan. I believe it's probably more important than funding. Without it, you can't succeed.
Which is a good transition. A foundational piece of marketing is your website. Joe, can you share some details on our #ValidCares initiative, please?
Yeah, sure. So our Valid Cares initiative is to helping small businesses be found better online. And the best way to do that is with the foundation piece, which is your website. So if you own a business and you don't have a website, or it's outdated, or your best friend's cousin's brother who lives in his basement built your website and you just don't have access to it, we have an initiative where we give away free website builds every single month, and we would love to help more people.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now we come to our A Advanced Septic Pump You Up quote of the day, and I asked Dan for a motivational quote, and I'll read it by William Joel. The good old days weren't always so good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. So Dan, share some insights on your quote.
So hopefully both of you are at least of an age that you know that William Joel is really Billy Joel. And that song came out when I was in junior high back in the late 70s. So I was having a little bit of fun with the William Joel. And I love quotes, but it seems the ones I remember the most come out of some lyrics. But I believe it to be true, and I've used it on many occasions. So, it's funny how often, and maybe it's just me, but you guys probably hear it too. Oh, it was so much better back then. We could drink from the garden hose, or we could paint with lead paint, or we could do all of these things we were able to do when we were kids. Oh, if it was only like that. And that carries over into business. Have either of you ever heard, oh, if we could just run the business like before, right? If you've heard that, or if you've ever caught yourself saying that, the reality is that back in the good old days, things weren't always that great, and there were people complaining back then as well. And today and into tomorrow, based on technology, based on just so many different things, tomorrow's not a bad thing, and there's nothing to be scared about. We should be embracing the opportunities that we have. So I love the quote. It came out, like I said, in the late 70s, and here 40 years later, I think it rings true even more so that those good old days, while there's no regrets, and it's what formed it. There were some challenges back then, and some things that we've learned. I'm still old enough, by the way, to remember not wearing a seatbelt as a kid because it wasn't mandated. There were no seatbelts in the back seat. I don't know if either of you remember that, but none of us would be driving around without seatbelts today. So the good old days weren't always so good. Tomorrow not only ain't as bad as it seems, but it's probably pretty spectacular.
Well, I do remember those days because I remember driving in my dad's 69 Cutlass Supreme, listening to an 8-track of The Ventures, driving to the grocery store where his seatbelt just crossed his lap, but me sitting in the back seat, I didn't have to.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
And then, like you said, the complaints thing, our quick takeaway is, there wasn't something called the internet back then. So if someone complained, you could only yell as far as it would go. The internet now has a giant megaphone where you want to say something about a business, the whole world will hear you.
Well,
So,
and just as a quick aside, let's take a look at what happened in 2020 with the pandemic, right? What would have, if that was 1990 instead of 2020, everybody would be out of business. Can you imagine what would have happened to the global economy in an age where we couldn't do Zoom, where we couldn't still have commerce? I can't even imagine the catastrophe that would have happened.
right. So now we get to the part of our podcast, our Fuse Networks Did You Know segment. So strengthen your cybersecurity by not doing these 6 things. I'll read these quickly. Not preparing for threats, neglecting maintenance and upgrades, failing to educate employees on security processes, not establishing a cybersecurity policy, using defaults or built-in options, and shortchange your business data. Visit fusenetworks.com to schedule your free consultation. So there's one trend and 2 myths that Dan shared with us that we want to get his thoughts on. This trend, people are living longer, whether they understand that or not. The fastest growing age group is centenarians. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, in other words, people that 100-year-old age group is growing at a rapid pace. People are living longer, and so we have to kind of plan for that. And the reality is that from a financial aspect, and I'm not a financial planner or advisor or wealth advisor anyway, but from a financial aspect, we have to plan on living longer. I work a lot with insurance. And so we talk about long-term care. That's part of it. But we also have to look at what are we doing from an activity standpoint? What are we doing? Do you really want to in air quotes, retire, or do you want to still be actively involved? Alan Alda still runs a podcast at 88 years old. So what is it that you want to do into your hundreds? Because there's a more and more of a chance that whether you want to or not, you're going to get there.
This myth, you have to grow old and feeble into the back nine of your life. So your book is Back Nine Walking. I guess just share us your insights on that myth.
So I wrote this book back. I am a golfer, Galen, like you are, and back nine walking.
I'm not a real golfer. I'm a hacker, so I don't put that label on myself. So
that's all right. So on the back nine of life, which I'm going to label at about 45-ish. Those of us who have gotten to that, we have a lot of similar experiences. And one of those experiences for me is that people get into their 70s and 80s and 90s, and all of a sudden they're old and feeble, and they're living on fixed incomes, and they're living in assisted living and nursing homes, or they start saying things like, "Oh, wait till you get old. It's not fun. Wait till you get old." And it doesn't have to be that way. I know in fact, listen to this. Just the other day, I played golf at Gold Mountain Golf Course, got teamed up with a guy and his grandson. The guy's 85 years old. Jeez. I'm going to tell you, he looked like he might be in his late 60s. He did ride the cart, but he kept it on the cart path because he wanted to continue to walk. So he would walk to his ball. This is a guy, and I bet you he shot in the mid 90s. This guy was fantastic, and he was 85. He is 85. And so the thought that we're, old is becoming decrepit doesn't have to be that way, and it shouldn't be that way, but you have to plan to do that now.
Yeah, good point. So, I turned 50 next year. So I would think, did I make the turn yet? Sometimes I feel like
you've made the turn. You're playing the 10th hole probably.
It's a 10th hole par 5, dog legs left, probably, right? I just hit it out of bounds. So anyway, okay. And our next myth, our last myth, you have no control over your own destiny. So I guess this resonates now. We're just coming off a pandemic. Are you going to pause, panic, or pivot? People sometimes, the sky is falling kind of mentality. But for businesses too, sometimes they just have no idea. So what are your insights to this, to our audience?
Yeah, we have more control than we think. And the reality is that it needs to be strategic and planned. So on a personal level, if you want to be active like the guy I played golf with at 85, that means you have to exercise. You have to eat healthy. You have to go to the doctor on an annual basis. You have to keep up you have to do all of those things that some people just they don't want to do. But you got to do those. That's part of getting to a point where you're in your 80s and 90s and doing well. The same is true in business. You talk about marketing. Well, you got to market every day. Every day is a marketing opportunity. So you have to take advantage of those and plan for those. You also have to plan for the future. We may not know exactly what technology is going to bring in the next 5 years, but we all know it's going to be something new. You better have your ear to the floor, or whatever the metaphor I'm screwing up is. You better be ready to know and act on what new technology can do for your business. So we can control things, but I think often we forget about that. We should be looking ahead, both in business and in life, to what do we want to look at? One last golf metaphor. I coach golf. I coach high school golf. And I will always or often tell the kids, where is you want to hit your next shot from? Mm-hmm. You should plan where your next shot is going to be, because that's going to tell you what club you're going to hit, what direction, all of that. In business and in life, we should be planning what our next shot looks like.
Almost like Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind, right?
Right.
Like, I play golf too. And sometimes I'll play the hole backwards. Like, I want my approach shot to be 90 yards or 100 yards. What shot do I get to go for that? Yeah. So now we'll transition into our topic, business continuity planning. What do I do if something bad happens to my business? So our last episode, we had mergers and acquisitions, talk about that. And I think this fits perfectly as a good transition into that. So if you're looking to sell your business, or you have your business, the pandemic happens, so that qualifies as something bad happening, or an owner could pass away, or there could be a conflict in a business. We've come across that. Talk to us a bit about that and like what you do for businesses.
Right.
Before we
So I'm a business continuity consultant, but I like to think of myself more as a resilience consultant, because we've talked a lot about being resilient. It's about keeping the business going. Some business owners out there say, I don't even know, I've never heard of business continuity. Well, you've heard of risk management, which I think is a misnomer. This is about keeping your business continuing regardless of what happens. It could be a pandemic, it could be a fire, it could be a theft, it could be losing your best employee, it could be staffing issues. We can go on and on. If you don't have a plan in place, then you're just making things up as you go along. And that's usually not good, because decisions that you're making in real time are usually not very good. But decisions that you make in advance of those bad times, you've put together, hey, you talked about cyber. We've had a ransomware attack, but wait, we talked about this. This is step one. This is step two. We don't have to make this up as we go along. Because when you make things up as you go along, you lose money, you lose time, you lose energy, which is all going to the bottom line of profitability. So having a business continuity plan, which does not have to be complex, but having a plan in place that prioritizes your business concerns and has a plan that says, if this happens, here's what we do. That could save your business and all the hard work and effort that you put into getting it to where it is.
So what do you see as, what are some things that businesses do wrong? I mean, outside of not having a plan, but are there some common things you see when you talk to businesses that go to you for help? What are there common things you see that a lot of businesses do wrong?
Yeah, one is the whole do-it-yourself concept. Oh, I'm smart, I'm resilient, I can figure this out. I don't need to hire someone to help me with it. I'll get it figured out. And I tell people I no longer get on my roof. I could do it. I could clean my roof, but I don't want to fall. And for me to hire somebody for $300 to clean my roof, it's worth my time. It's the same concept here. I can do it. I can figure it out. Yeah, but what cost? How much time was wasted? How much money was lost? So that's one of probably the biggest mistakes small business owners say, I can do this on my own. The other big mistake is I hate just not thinking about it. Just saying, you know what, I'll worry about it if it happens, because it's probably not going to happen. I call that the CNN moment. That stuff only happens to people on CNN, right? Doesn't happen. I don't know anybody that's happened to, that tornado that ripped through. Well, we don't have tornadoes here, so we don't think about it. But it's that, you know what, I got to focus only on my marketing and only on my product and only on my employees and my shortage. The reality is we've got to play defense too. We have to be prepared for the bad things to happen so that we can continue to do the things that we like. Those are probably the two biggest ones.
So one of the things that I wrote down when we initially talked, we wrote down mitigating risk. So how do businesses mitigate risk, I guess, in their business?
Yeah, so mitigating risk is putting things in place in advance to either prevent a bad thing from happening, which is the cheapest, or to mitigate or make it less. So for instance, in a world of cyber where everybody has computers and IT, all of and I'm not a cyber guy, but putting all the cybersecurity things into place, not letting patches or maintenance slip, and doing education, that's mitigation. If you have a large facility that if a fire damaged it, well, mitigation is a sprinkler system in place so that if it happens, you're mitigating the loss. You might actually even do things around your reputation that says, if something damages my reputation, do I have emails and marketing and promotion in place to, if we have a recall, what do we do there? So it's about thinking about the bad things that can happen that can damage your reputation, damage your bottom line, and what can we put into place that is either going to prevent it or lessen the impact of it.
So what would you say, I guess let me tee this up a little more. we've seen an influx of people post-pandemic starting their own businesses. They've worked for a company and now's the time. They've gained some perspective to do something on their own. So to those business owners that are just starting a business or like relatively early within the first 1 or 2 years, the last thing they're thinking of is like something bad's going to happen because they're just trying to get on their feet. Are there 1 or 2 things you could tell those business owners to think in the back of their head? I guess for me, if I'm thinking as an audience member, it's almost like having a will, all right, I'm 50. Do I need a will? Oh, no, I'm not going to die till 70. I'm not going to have my CNN moment, knock on wood. But to business owners, sometimes it's hard enough, a mental task to get started to, okay, I finally did this, but then they don't think of the contingency stuff. So what could you share with those businesses out there?
Number one, play offense and defense. If you like sports, it's a basketball, football, it's a clear. Offense is around marketing. It's about networking. It's getting your product out into the right demographic. It's getting your newsletters out, doing podcasts, all of that. Play offense because marketing is incredibly important because that's how you bring in revenue. But also play defense. Think about what are the things that could stop me from marketing, that could stop me from distributing my products, that would really hurt if they happen. How can I insure against them, both financially and with risk mitigation and all of that? So you can't win a championship on a basketball court or on a football field by only having an offense. You need to have a defense as well. The same is true in business. The other thing that I'll just talk about insurance. People hate insurance, but insurance, the well done, is going to say, I can't tell you how many, you couldn't operate without it. You need to insure your stuff. You need to insure yourself and your life, because what happens if something happens to you? You need to insure for disability. All of these things are ways to give you money that you don't have in the bank in case something bad happens. It's part of playing defense. So as much as I love marketing, I have my own podcast, I do all of that. I spend 60% of my time marketing. I've got plans in place in the background that I don't have to do every day, but I just have to schedule out strategically a few times a year, and I'll get those done. It's worth the time investment.
I want to go back to what you just brought about insurance. Is there a certain type of insurance that businesses should have with your, plan with the end in mind?
Yeah, I'll give you the one that slips through the cracks the most, because they all have to get business insurance. They all have to get auto insurance. Cyber insurance is now becoming more common. I don't have to necessarily talk about that as much. Business owners, entrepreneurs are not buying disability insurance on themselves. And that's a problem, because that's the one thing that you're insuring against that you don't currently have. It's the asset you don't have. It's your future income. And so you can put that into place for your employees with health insurance and all of that. But most people, a lot don't think about themselves. I'm not going to worry about myself. I'm not going to get hurt. Galen, kind of like you're 65% more likely to become disabled by the age of 65 than to die by the age of 65. That's a big number.
It is.
And too many solopreneurs whose whole life, I can look at me. I am the rainmaker. I'm the revenue generator. If something happens to me, it's done. The faucet is turned off. That's an important piece that gets overlooked a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, it's it just resonates. Play offense, play defense. You have the football helmets in the background. I guess if you score 50 and you give up 60, you lose the game.
Right.
No matter how good your offense is. You got to get the leaks stopped. So before we close, can you tell everyone how they can find your podcast? We didn't talk about it, but tell us a little bit about the Shrimp Tank podcast, how they can find you and everything.
Yeah, actually, if you go to shrimptankpodcast.com, Seattle, because we are nationally syndicated. There's cities all over. All the other cities are good. We like ours a lot. So shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. We are an iHeartRadio network podcast, but we're available on Spotify and I listen on Apple and Google, and we're all over the place. We live stream every Wednesday at noon on our Facebook page, but then we drop it for the rest of everything else. We're on YouTube. So you can learn a lot. We talk to entrepreneurs about how they got their business started and what's helped them. So it's an entrepreneur business podcast. And then if anybody wants to check out the book, you maybe were going to ask me, back9walking.com, the number 9, back9walking.com. And I think, yeah, there it is. Joe's got a copy of it. Captain Jack, unfortunately, that's his last book. He passed away in March suddenly, but he's my co-writer on that. And so please, love to have you check that out.
Awesome. So before we close, one last plug. Joe, can you talk Q Image 4 on our Valor Cares initiative one last time?
Sure. Dan talked a lot about marketing and how important it is. So the most important thing within your marketing is someplace to send your traffic to. So if you don't have a website or your website's outdated and you're just looking for a new one to have built, go to askvalormasterminds.com, click on the Valor Cares tab and submit your information, and hopefully you'll be our next winner.
Awesome. So on behalf of our sponsors, Advanced Septic Services and Fuse Networks, Dan, thank you so much for joining us. Next time we have you, hopefully we'll be local, because we're all in Washington. We're all in the same state within like a 30-mile radius of each other. But for, we're doing this virtually, showing the power of the connectivity of technology and everything. Thanks for joining us today. So
Thanks, Dan.
my name is Galen.
I'm Joe.
And coming at you virtually from the BD Local Studios in Tacoma, Washington. Stick around for the Marky Boy Minute. Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. Thanks, guys.
Hey, welcome back to another Marky Boys Minute. I have 3 reasons why you should rent a studio for your next production. Number 1, lighting.
So, this is a diffuser. It produces soft light for your photo shoots, and you actually get 2 of these when you book a shoot here.
And number 2, sound.
It is ridiculously quiet in here. You don't hear outside noise, so it's really great to focus.
And the fact that we are next to the airport here in Seattle, you don't even hear those airplanes. It's crazy. Number 3, ambiance.
It's decorated. It's colorful, and we have about 10 backdrop colors.
So for your next production, photography, videography, rent us. If you follow us on Instagram at Creative Seattle, you can hit the link on the top in the bio and rent our space. That's our time. Thanks for watching.